Tonight, we're traveling thousands of years into the past, straight to the banks of the Nile. Ancient Egypt, a land of towering pyramids, sun-worshipping pharaohs, and gods that monitor your every move like ancient security cameras. But let's be honest, behind the golden sarcophagi and majestic temples lies a life that's anything but glamorous. Today's big question: could you survive even a single day in ancient Egypt? Spoiler: the pyramids might be impressive, but daily life, brutal. By the end of this video, you'll realize that the heat, the hygiene, and the hard labor make modern problems feel like minor inconveniences. Your day in ancient Egypt kicks off before sunrise, because the sun's already turning your flimsy little hut into a convection oven. There's no such thing as curtains, and forget anything resembling AC. You're lying on a mat made of straw, drenched in sweat, praying for a breeze that isn't arriving, that cool Nile air they mention in documentaries. Yeah, that's a myth. The morning heat hits fast and hard, with temperatures racing past 90 degrees F, before your stomach even grumbles for breakfast. You're wrapped in thin linen that sticks to you like wet tissue, and you haven't even left the house yet. If you thought it couldn't get worse, wait until noon. The sun over ancient Egypt doesn't just shine, it punishes. Temperatures soar over 100 degrees F like it's a competition. Your linen outfit is basically useless against the searing heat, and there's no shade unless you want to huddle next to a mud brick wall that's also been roasting for hours. No sunscreen exists. Rich folks might have oils, but commoners like you are lucky to have clay or maybe old superstition, like smearing crocodile dung. Yes, you heard that right. Desperate times call for disgusting measures. Ra isn't just a sun god, he's your full-time tormentor. By mid-morning, you've barely survived the first few hours, and it's time to wash up. You trek to the Nile, which is your only hope for cooling down. But don't expect a refreshing spa experience. The river reeks, a mix of fish, algae, and whatever upstream villages dumped into it. Flies buzz, frogs hop, and unseen things wiggle in the water. You clean yourself the old-fashioned way, with sand. No soap, just gritty, coarse sand to scrub the sweat and dirt off your skin. It's less cleansing ritual and more emergency skin exfoliation. And yes, there are leeches. Probably a few parasites too. Enjoy! After your bath, it's time to do laundry in the same lovely river. You beat your clothes against rocks, keeping one eye on the water for crocs. Remember, this river is everyone's everything. Bathtub, laundry basin, sometimes even toilet. So it's carrying more than just water. Once clean-ish, you haul full jars of water home. Each jug is back-breaking heavy, and balancing one on your head is basically your daily workout. The sun's now a fiery spotlight overhead, daring you to make it home before passing out. And guess what? You'll repeat all of this again tomorrow. Welcome to your new normal. Back home, it's finally time to eat, and breakfast in ancient Egypt isn't going to wow your taste buds. You're not unwrapping fruit or sipping a latte. You're crouched on the dirt floor with a chunk of coarse, jaw-breaking bread. Made from barley or emmer wheat, it's baked in clay ovens shared with local rats, and always comes with a surprise crunch of sand. Grinding grain between stone slabs adds a bit of rock dust to every loaf. Then there's the beer. It's not crisp or cool. It's warm, cloudy, and about as thick as porridge. Everyone drinks it, even kids, because it's safer than Nile water. Together, bread and beer are your basic fuel. Not fancy, not flavorful. Just barely enough to get you through another brutal day. That gritty loaf and muddy beer, that's not just your meal. It's your energy source for the endless labor ahead. and it's not glamorous. Unless you're part of a lucky elite, priests, scribes, or royalty, your job is pure muscle. Maybe you farm. That means ankle deep in mud, planting barley, pulling weeds, and sweating under a merciless sky. Your tools are simple wooden plows, dull sickles, and bare hands. No machines. Just your body grinding against the land. If the Nile doesn't flood enough, you're stuck irrigating by hand using a shaduf, a wooden lever that lets you scoop water from the river, one exhausting bucket at a time. Farming here isn't just back-breaking. It's a lifelong wrestling match with the elements. If you thought farming was brutal, try building temples and tombs. You're part of a workforce hauling multi-ton blocks with nothing but ropes, sledges, and sore muscles. There's no forklift, no safety harness, just sweat, sun, and prayer. You haul these stones across searing sand and up makeshift ramps while barefoot, dodging rocks and collapsing from heat. If you're lucky, you might get a jug of beer and a shout of encouragement. If you're not, you're nursing a sprained ankle with a scowl from the foreman. Some laborers even work inside tombs, carving intricate hieroglyphs and delicate chambers, all for a pharaoh's afterlife while your own remains a daily struggle to survive. You build his eternity while shortening your own. Think being a woman exempts you from all this grind. Not even close. While you're not hauling boulders, your responsibilities are equally intense. You're up before the sun grinding grain with a heavy stone until your arms ache. You fetch water, cook, clean, weave linen, watch the kids, and even help in the fields during harvest. If you get a break, it's when the baby naps. And that's when you prep lunch. Your whole day is a blur of chores, sweat, and caretaking, done without complaint because no one else will do it. There's no spa day, no time to yourself. Your rest is collapsing beside your family at night, knowing it all starts over at dawn. You're the engine of your household, and it never stops running. There's no such thing as clocking out. In ancient Egypt, the sun is your timekeeper, rising to drag you from sleep and setting only when your work is done. If you're lucky, days off, maybe during a festival, but that just means more work in a different setting. When you finally return home, your body feels like it's been trampled by oxen. Everything aches, your back, your hands, your feet, and you haven't even had dinner yet. There's no lounging on cushions, just a spot on a straw mat, and maybe a quick bite before sleep. And no one's handing you a weekend to recover. In this world, rest is a luxury and exhaustion is a daily companion. Now imagine grumbling about your boss after all that back-breaking labor. In ancient Egypt, that's not just a bad idea, it's dangerous. Your boss isn't just your superior, he's seen as divine. The pharaoh isn't some guy promoted through politics. He's literally believed to be a living god, Horus on earth, son of Ra. Questioning his authority, that's not just disrespect, it's a cosmic offense. If crops fail or floods are late, it's never his fault, it's yours for disrupting divine order. Criticizing him is a fast track to punishment, or worse. You're not just a worker, you're a cog in a divine machine, and the guy at the top built the gears. Better to sweat and stay silent than anger a god in human form. Don't think you'll ever meet this living god either. If you're a commoner, you won't even see him up close. Maybe, just maybe, you'll glimpse his golden barge floating down the Nile during a festival surrounded by guards, priests, and fanfare. Blink and he's gone. The pharaoh lives in palaces you'll never enter, issues decrees you must obey, and benefits from temples and statues you might help build but never enjoy. His image, everywhere, from murals to coins to the seals on your rations. He's always watching, always honored, and always larger than life. You don't need to know him. You just need to serve him and be thankful you were allowed to. If you're assigned to a royal project, congratulations, you've just been blessed with the chance to suffer even more. Working on the pharaoh's tomb, temple, or monument is painted as a great honor. But in reality, it's just harder labor under closer scrutiny. You're expected to be grateful while carving blocks in the heat for 14 hours straight, often on dangerous scaffolds or deep inside stone chambers. Don't mess up either. Chisel the wrong glyph or break a slab, and you might be punished, or worse, buried alongside your mistake. Royal service is supposed to elevate you, but most days it just breaks you faster than the average job. And forget rebellion. That's not an option here. Pharaohs crush resistance swiftly and completely. Just whisper the idea of rising up or skipping a tax payment, and your whole village could vanish. Erased from history and sorted over as a warning. The state is ruthless and absolute. Pharaoh doesn't tolerate disorder because his role isn't just ruling people. It's keeping the universe balanced. In their eyes, rebellion isn't political. It's an attack on cosmic harmony. That means dissent is both treason and blasphemy. So, no, you won't be speaking your mind or rallying others. You'll be bowing, serving, and hoping Ra shines kindly on you today. And just when you thought your biggest enemy was the heat or hunger, enter sand. It's everywhere. In your clothes, your food, your bed. Your very soul feels gritty. Sand in ancient Egypt isn't background scenery. It's a daily nuisance. It rides in on the wind, sneaks into your sandals, grinds between your teeth, and clings to every part of your body. You'll shake out your tunic and still find sand in the seams. Sleeping. Expect a layer of dust on your mat by morning. Even cooking doesn't escape it. Bread comes preloaded with a crunch, thanks to sandy flour. Sand is your uninvited companion from sunup to sundown, and there's no escape. Now, let's talk about eating in ancient Egypt. Again, bread is your lifeline, but it's also slowly destroying your teeth. Why? Because the grinding stones used to make flour chip away and leave behind tiny bits of grit. So every bite of bread is like chewing a mouthful of pebbles. Over time, your molars wear down flat, even crack. Dental care, non-existent. Most Egyptians live with chronic toothaches, abscesses, and infections that can spread dangerously. Even young adults often have the teeth of someone 3 times their age. The food may fill your stomach, but it's waging war on your gums. And guess what? There's no dentist coming to save you. Hope you're not too attached to the idea of a clean home either. Your mud brick house has gaps everywhere. No windows, no insulation, and definitely no pest control. Every gust of wind blows in another wave of dust and sand. Your floors are coated with fine grit. Your dishes need constant rinsing, and your bed is never truly clean. Insects everywhere. Flies buzz around your meals, ants crawl through your grain stores, and mosquitoes bite you nightly. You swat, you sweep, you shake out linens, but the sand and bugs always return. Cleanliness isn't a state you reach, it's a battle you lose daily. Let's not forget the footwear situation, or rather the lack of one. Most people go barefoot, their feet calloused and cracked from walking on scorching stone and sand. If you're lucky, you own sandals, simple, worn ones made of woven reeds or leather. But even sandals aren't much help. Sand still sneaks in, grinding between your toes like nature's version of a cheese grater. Walking becomes a painful, gritty shuffle, especially after a full day of work. Your feet are sunburned, blistered, and sore, and there's no ointment or cushioned sneakers waiting for you. Just another reminder that comfort is not part of your reality. Every once in a while, nature really kicks things up a notch with a sandstorm. These aren't just windy afternoons. They're full-blown atmospheric assaults. The sky turns an eerie orange, visibility drops to nothing, and breathing becomes a dusty nightmare. Sand blasts into your eyes, your nose, your mouth. The air is thick with particles, and you're suddenly coughing, stumbling, blind in a swirling chaos of grit. The storm could last hours or days, and when it's over, your home, your clothes, even your food are coated in a new layer of dust. You'll be spitting sand for a week and cleaning for a month. In ancient Egypt, religion isn't a once-a-week activity. It's the lens through which you view everything. Gods aren't distant. They're in your crops, your illnesses, your job, even your sleep. Every town has its own temples and favorite deities, each ruling a different piece of life. Ra sails the sun across the sky, Thoth manages writing and time, Bastet guards the home, and Sobek rules the Nile. There's a god for childbirth, a god for beer, and even a hippo goddess to protect moms. Before meals, you offer a peace to the gods. Before bed, you pray Set doesn't wreck your life overnight. Divine approval isn't a luxury, it's your survival plan. Every part of your daily routine is steeped in worship. Before you take a bite of bread or a sip of beer, you pinch off a piece and offer it to the gods. You murmur thanks to Ra at sunrise and whisper to Hathor as you brew your morning beer. Even stubbing your toe might lead you to curse a spirit, and that's risky. Your home probably includes a tiny shrine with figurines, maybe Bez, the dwarf god who wards off evil with his wild face, or Toret, the pregnant hippo goddess who protects families. The spiritual world isn't a distant idea. It's in your face, in your house, and always demanding respect, or else. And when someone dies, things get even more intense. Death isn't seen as an end, but a complicated transition to a whole new existence. Funerals are long, intricate affairs filled with rituals, incantations, and preparations for a journey through the afterlife. The dead aren't simply mourned. They're equipped for an epic voyage. You'll need prayers, amulets, and even instructions to navigate the afterlife's dangers. Skimping on these rites, a surefire way to get your loved ones stuck in spiritual limbo. Egyptians don't just bury their dead. They prep them like they're off on a divine business trip. The stakes after death are high. Your soul faces a cosmic court in the Hall of Ma'at. First, you must recite a long list of negative confessions, claiming you haven't lied, stolen, cheated, or even wished for your neighbor's donkey. Mess up. You risk eternal consequences. Then comes the most critical part, weighing your heart against the feather of truth. If your heart is light, you're in. If not, it's gobbled up by Amit, a terrifying beast that's part croc, lion, and hippo. No second chances. Your soul is erased forever. Eternal paradise or instant deletion. That's the ancient Egyptian version of judgment. Even if you lived a decent life, the afterlife is no guarantee. One slip up, a mispronounced confession, forgetting a sacred password or an unoffered prayer, and you could flunk eternity. That's why people buried cheat sheets with their dead. The Book of the Dead wasn't just decoration. It was essential reading for your soul. It told you what to say, what to avoid, and which gods to flatter. It's like an ancient spiritual SAT prep course. Fail, and you don't just disappoint your ancestors. You vanish. Egyptians believed the afterlife was worth obsessing over because getting it wrong had terrifying results. But if you passed the tests, paradise awaited. The field of reeds, an eternal version of Egypt but without the misery. Lush crops grow themselves. The sun is warm but never scorching, and your loved ones greet you with joy. You sail down a perfect Nile, sip beer without hangovers, and never haul water again. It's what every Egyptian dreamed of: peace, comfort, and endless harvests. The promise of this divine reward made all the struggle on earth feel worth it. In a brutal life filled with heat, hunger, and toil, the idea of eternal rest kept people going. It was hope carved into stone. The richer you are, the better shot you have at a smooth journey through the afterlife. Wealthy Egyptians pour resources into death prep grand tombs, gold amulets, mummification, and teams of priests reciting spells. Temples are stocked with offerings to curry favor with the gods. The average person, not so lucky. You do your best, maybe leave a bit of bread, say your daily prayers, and hope the divine realm cuts you some slack. Religion isn't just belief, it's investment. And in ancient Egypt, spiritual insurance is a luxury item. The gods might love you, but they love well-funded rituals even more. Living in ancient Egypt without religion is like swimming without water. Impossible. Every sneeze, dream, illness or success is credited to the gods. You pray for protection, for harvests, for health, even for a good night's sleep. Your house has icons, your work has rituals, and your festivals are spiritual marathons. Religion is the backbone of society, blending politics, law, and culture into one divine narrative. You aren't just part of a civilization, you're part of a cosmic story, playing your role to preserve balance and avoid chaos. Whether you believe it or not, you live it every single day. Feeling sick, got an injury or mysterious ache, ancient medicine is waiting, but it's a mix of helpful remedies and outright guesswork. You'll visit a snow or doctor, trained in both healing and magic. They might bandage your wound with honey and herbs, surprisingly effective, but they'll also chant spells to chase away evil spirits. Every illness has both a natural and supernatural cause, so every treatment mixes both. A stomach ache could be spoiled food, or a curse, you treat both just in case. Medicine here is part science, part spiritual defense, and all wrapped in the hope that something works. Some treatments are genius, others are gross. Honey's antibacterial, and moldy bread, surprisingly useful against infections. But then you get remedies like cow dung poultices or onion paste for headaches, eye problems. There's a fun recipe with lizard blood and beer. It sounds bizarre, but in their world, healing the body meant pleasing the gods too. Every cure came with a spell, every ointment with a ritual. Whether it's superstition or science doesn't matter. You'll try anything to feel better. Ancient medicine is trial and error with a strong dose of divine intervention. Need surgery. Better bite down on something tough. There's no anesthesia, just hope and maybe a swig of beer. Doctors might drain boils, stitch wounds, or even drill into your skull if needed. Broken bones. They can splint them with surprising skill. Dental issues, though, are a nightmare. Your teeth are worn flat from gritty bread, and infections are common. Toothaches lead to extractions with metal tools and zero pain relief. You might pass out from pain before the job is done, and afterward, expect a protective charm or amulet to ward off infection. Healing isn't just physical, it's spiritual warfare. No matter what you're treated for, whether it's a cough, a wound, or a broken toe, you'll likely leave with an amulet dangling from your neck. Healing in ancient Egypt always includes a spiritual safeguard, a charm shaped like a scarab beetle, the Eye of Horus, or a hippo goddess isn't just decoration, it's your protection. Your doctor might prescribe a potion and a prayer, but they'll also hand you a talisman to wear until you feel better. It's standard protocol: treat the symptoms, then defend the soul. Because if your illness came from a spirit, no amount of honey will fix it alone. When it comes to women in ancient Egypt, the story's complicated. On paper, they enjoy rights other ancient cultures never offered. They can inherit property, divorce husbands, and sue in court. A woman's legal identity isn't hidden behind her husband's. It stands on its own. But the catch: most women are too busy surviving to use those rights. In reality, they're waking up early, grinding grain, fetching water, raising kids, cooking meals, and working the fields. Legal status means little when your day is a non-stop cycle of labor. Yes, you have rights, but also responsibilities that never end. A day in a peasant woman's life starts well before dawn and doesn't end until long after sunset. She's the engine of the household, doing everything from food prep to childcare to field work. Grinding grain isn't a quick chore. It takes hours of back-breaking motion with heavy stones. Laundry, weaving, and cooking follow. If she has a baby, that child's likely strapped to her back while she kneads dough or stirs lentils. Even short moments of rest come with more tasks. She's not seen as inferior, but she is constantly exhausted. Her life is a grind, in every sense of the word. Childbirth in ancient Egypt is a dangerous gamble. There are no doctors, no antiseptics, and definitely no pain relief. Midwives do their best using incense, chants, and protective amulets to comfort the laboring woman. She gives birth squatting on bricks or sitting on a stool, with incense, smoke swirling, and the gods hopefully listening. But complications, bleeding, infection, prolonged labor can be fatal. Many women don't survive. Even newborns face high risks. In a world without modern medicine, bringing life into the world means staring death in the face. And yet, it happens daily, again and again. Now let's talk about clothes. In Egypt's unforgiving heat, linen is your best friend. It's light, breathable, and simple. Most people, men and women alike, wear white or off-white linen garments. Men usually sport a kilt-like wrap. Women a sleeveless dress that goes to the ankles. Wealth determines how fine the fabric is. The poor get coarse, often tattered versions, while the wealthy enjoy pleated, decorated outfits. But no matter how rich or poor, everyone sweats through it. You own a couple outfits, if that. Washing clothes means heading back to the Nile, scrubbing out dirt with sand and prayer. Even when clean, your clothes are constantly under siege from heat, dust, and sweat. And laundry day is no easy task. With no soap, you head to the river, beat your linen against rocks, and rinse in murky water. Hoping a hippo doesn't make a surprise visit. You dry your tunic on the banks, but it's still stained and stiff. Shoes, optional for most. Sandals exist, but many people go barefoot out of practicality. The ground is hot, rough, and covered in hazards. Calloused feet are a badge of survival. Comfort isn't the goal, function is. You wear what you must, because there's no alternative. Accessories in ancient Egypt aren't just for show. They serve spiritual and social purposes. A scarab necklace might symbolize rebirth, while an ankh charm represents life. Even the poorest people try to wear protective amulets, carved from cheap stone or clay. Wealthier Egyptians flaunt faience beads, copper bangles, and delicate jewelry that marks their status. Cosmetics also play a role. Men and women use kohl to line their eyes, not just for beauty, but to block sun glare and ward off infection. There's no getting ready routine here. It's all symbolic. all functional and all part of daily life. Makeup in ancient Egypt is more than skin deep. It's sacred. Lining your eyes with black coal or green malachite isn't just for style, it's protection against both sun and evil. The tools are primitive sticks, bones, or reeds used to smear crushed minerals onto your eyelids. Lip color comes from red ochre mixed with fat. Perfume? If you're lucky, you have scented oils or a wax cone that melts into your wig at special events. But if you're poor, your scent is just life, sweat, smoke, and a bit of Nile funk. Still, beauty matters, even when survival takes center stage. Hair is another reflection of class and culture. Many Egyptians shave their heads to avoid lice and keep cool. Priests do it for ritual purity. But that doesn't mean everyone's bald. Wigs are a big deal, especially for the wealthy. Made from real hair or wool, they're styled in braids or curls and often scented. A nice wig turns heads at festivals. But for the average person, it's practicality over flare short hair, tied up, and out of the way. There's no salon appointment, just a sharp blade and a steady hand. Whether it's fashion or function, grooming still holds power here. Even with linen clothes, shaved heads, and kohl-rimmed eyes, nothing fully protects you from Egypt's brutal climate. Bugs bite through fabric, sand finds every crevice, and sweat is constant. You dab oils or smear clay to fight irritation. At night, temperatures drop, and if you don't own a heavier cloak, you just shiver and wait for sunrise. And since Egypt doesn't have true seasons, just hot and slightly less hot, you're always managing discomfort. There's no escape from the elements, only adaptation. Your clothes help, your rituals help, but in the end, nature always wins. Compared to other ancient societies, Egypt nailed functional fashion. Lightweight linen makes way more sense than the heavy wool worn in Mesopotamia or the layers of toga cloth in Rome. The Egyptians figured out early how to dress for desert life. Even so, don't romanticize those white linen tunics. They're always sweaty, always dusty, and rarely clean. Your clothing might help a little with the heat, but it doesn't save you from exhaustion. It's just enough to survive, not thrive. In short, you're not strutting down the Nile runway. You're just trying not to melt into a sunburned puddle. Now let's shift gears to something Egypt is famous for: writing. Those intricate wall carvings of animals, gods and symbols. That's hieroglyphics, and they're more complex than they look. These aren't just pretty pictures, they're a full language. Each symbol might represent a sound, a whole word, or clarify meaning. No vowels, no punctuation, and no spaces between words. The direction you read depends on which way the little figures are facing. It's flexible, beautiful, and borderline impossible to learn without years of training. For most Egyptians, reading hieroglyphs is like reading magic. Learning hieroglyphics isn't casual. It's a lifelong commitment, and only a tiny slice of society gets access. Scribes begin training young, copying characters onto broken pottery and scraps of wood, drilling repetition into their bones. They memorize hundreds of symbols and standardized phrases. By adulthood, their writing hands are more claw than flesh. But the payoff, massive. Scribes don't dig ditches or carry stones. They sit in shaded rooms, track grain, write royal decrees, and get paid in food, beer and prestige. In a society built on labor, writing is the ultimate power move, and scribes know it. There's even an ancient propaganda text called The Satire of the Trades, where a father brags to his son, "Be a scribe, every other job is awful." He mocks the fisherman, the soldier, the sandal maker, listing all their pains and miseries. Scribes, in contrast, work in comfort, protected from sun, sweat, and danger. It's not just a profession, it's a lifestyle upgrade. Being able to write makes you valuable to temples, palaces, and the state. In a world where knowledge is hoarded, the scribe doesn't just survive, he climbs the ladder. For everyone else, writing is mystical. The word for hieroglyphs literally translates to God's words. To write something is to invoke divine power. That's why names were so important. Writing someone's name helped preserve their soul. Conversely, erasing a name could damn them to non-existence. Pharaohs sometimes did this to rivals, chiseling their identities off walls to erase them from memory and the afterlife. Writing wasn't casual, it was sacred. To etch something in stone was to make it eternal, and to deface it was the harshest form of vengeance. Hieroglyphs weren't for shopping lists or love notes. They were reserved for temples, tombs, and sacred inscriptions. For everyday writing, scribes used a simpler script called hieratic, faster, easier, but still unreadable to most. Papyrus scrolls were expensive and reserved for important text, legal documents, medical recipes, religious hymns. Scribes had their own supply kits, reed pens, ink made from soot or ochre, and water jars for thinning. Their work shaped Egypt's memory, every prayer, every decree, every prophecy recorded by hand. It was a job of ink, sweat, and unmatched precision. Still, don't think being a scribe was effortless. The pressure to get it right was intense. A single mistake could mean misrepresenting a law or misguiding a soul in the afterlife. Imagine writing a spell incorrectly and dooming someone to eternal punishment. That's a typo with serious consequences. And yet, scribes were human. You can find scratched out lines and frustrated corrections in ancient texts. Evidence that even the best had bad days. But they also had respect. In a society that worshipped order and knowledge, scribes were the quiet architects of civilization. Now step back and look at the big picture. Could you really handle this life? Ancient Egypt might seem glamorous from afar. Golden tombs, majestic temples, timeless art. But for most, it's a grueling cycle of sun, labor, and survival. There's no Wi-Fi, no medicine, no breaks. You're always hot, always tired, always doing chores. Even your gods expect a full-time relationship. And when you finally fall into bed at night, it's on a straw mat, covered in dust, with the Nile humming in the background and sand between your toes. It's not paradise, it's endurance. The harsh truth is, most modern folks wouldn't last a day. Our comforts, cold drinks, clean bathrooms, medicine, privacy, don't exist here. You can't call in sick. You can't microwave dinner. You can't scroll your phone while pretending to work. Every part of life in Egypt is effort. From hauling water to avoiding infection, it's a constant fight to stay alive. Sure, Egyptians find joy. They dance, sing, joke, and celebrate. But life is hard-earned, not handed to you. One bad harvest, one wrong move, and everything unravels. There's no backup plan, just grit and prayer. And yet they endured. Generation after generation, Egyptians built monuments, maintained rituals, and dreamed of eternity. They believed life had meaning, even when it was painful. Family, faith, and hope held everything together. When we look at their pyramids today, we're not just seeing stone. We're seeing effort, belief, and resilience. Their lives were tougher than ours in every way, but they left behind something eternal. So, while you might not survive a single afternoon under that blazing sun, you can still respect the people who did. They walked so we could remember. So let's say you wake up in ancient Egypt, not as royalty, not even as a scribe, but as an ordinary farmer, laborer, or housewife. First thing you notice, The floor's dirt, the roof's leaking, and something just scuttled under your bed mat. There's no mattress, no pillow, just woven reeds and maybe a thin blanket. You're sweating before you even stand up. Somewhere nearby, a goat is bleating, a child is crying, and someone's already pounding grain. This isn't a scene from a peaceful history museum. It's a daily grind of survival. And your to-do list is packed before the sun's even up. Your day starts with hauling water, not from a faucet, but from the river. You carry heavy clay jars balanced on your head or shoulders, walking barefoot over sharp stones and burning sand. There's no time to pause. Without that water, no one eats, drinks, or washes. It's step one in a long chain of survival tasks. Then comes grinding grain, making bread, feeding animals, and tending to kids. The Nile might be nearby, but comfort isn't. This isn't just a morning routine. It's a full-body workout disguised as a chore list. Ancient Egyptian life burns calories you didn't even know you had. Inside your house, privacy doesn't exist. The walls are thin, the rooms small, and the whole family, sometimes even your animals, share the same space. You cook over a smoky hearth, breathe in charcoal fumes, and swat at flies that seem immune to your efforts. Forget me time. Even taking a bathroom break is public. Sanitation is rudimentary at best, and the air smells of sweat, smoke, and livestock. You love your family, sure, but you're never more than 3 feet from someone coughing, crying, or demanding something. It's not cozy, it's crowded. And there's no door to close for peace. The little conveniences we take for granted today vanished. No running water, no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, unless you count a handful of ashes or crushed shells. You wash your body in the river if you're lucky, or maybe with a wet rag. The clothes you're wearing, same as yesterday and maybe the day before. You rinse them in the Nile and dry them in the sun, but they're still stiff, stained, and sandy. Soap isn't common, and shampoo isn't a thing. Cleanliness is more about effort than outcome. You're constantly chasing hygiene, but the heat and dust always win. Sick days don't exist in ancient Egypt. If you're injured, you wrap it with linen, maybe apply some herbs, and keep going. No sick leave, no clinics, and certainly no antibiotics. If you get a fever, you sweat it out, hoping the gods or the herbs work. If you break something, you splint it with wooden cloth and hope it heals straight. And if you get an infection, that's a gamble. One bad tooth could kill you. People live with pain because they have to. Every illness feels risky, and every recovery feels like divine favor. Medicine helps, but your best hope is resilience. And when you're finally done for the day, when the sun dips behind the palms and the air cools a bit, you don't collapse onto a mattress. You lie down on a mat of reeds, maybe with your kids curled beside you and a jar of water nearby. There's no lamp unless you have oil, and no bedtime routine. You fall asleep to the sounds of the Nile, buzzing insects and distant voices. It's not peaceful so much as necessary. You're so exhausted that sleep isn't a luxury, it's a shutdown. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again, and again. Because in Egypt, life doesn't slow down, ever. And yet, despite everything, the heat, the hardship, the grind, Egyptians still found joy. They sang, they danced, they told jokes and played music. Festivals were loud and colourful, filled with food, beer, and celebration. Even the poorest families might throw a party when the harvest was good or a child was born. People found ways to laugh, to flirt, to connect. They carved funny doodles on pottery and wrote love poems. Their lives were hard, but not joyless. They found light in the cracks. Because when your world is tough, Small joys matter even more, and they held on to them fiercely. They also had a deep sense of purpose. Life wasn't random. It was part of a divine pattern. Their roles, their duties, their struggles were all part of keeping the universe in balance. They believed in Ma'at, truth, justice, order. Every action, every ritual helped uphold that cosmic balance. When they worked the land, prayed to the gods, or cared for family, it wasn't just survival, it was sacred. Even the poorest peasant believed their actions mattered in the grand scheme. It gave meaning to monotony and purpose to pain. They weren't just surviving, they were contributing to harmony. And of course they believed in legacy. Egyptians built to last. Tombs, pyramids, statues, they weren't for decoration. They were messages to the future. We were here. We mattered. Every brick placed, every hieroglyph carved, every burial prepared. It all reflected their desire for eternity. They didn't have digital backups or cloud storage, but they built in stone. They wanted the gods and generations to come to remember them, and it worked. Thousands of years later, we still marvel at what they made. In their harsh world, permanence was power, and memory was survival. So no, you probably wouldn't survive a day in ancient Egypt. But that's okay. You don't have to. They already did the hard part. They walked barefoot on burning sand, carried water for miles, and faced every day without complaint. They suffered, endured, and celebrated under the same sun we see today. And somehow they managed to leave behind a legacy that still stands. The pyramids, the papyri, the stories, they're proof that even in the most grueling conditions, people can create something eternal. So while we sleep under fans and scroll on phones, we remember the ones who made history, grain by grain, brick by brick. The next time you feel too hot waiting for your coffee or complain about slow Wi-Fi, think of ancient Egyptians hauling water from a river full of crocodiles just to drink or cook. Your biggest discomfort might be a warm office, but theirs was dragging mud bricks in 110 degrees F heat, barefoot, under the glare of an unforgiving sun. The daily struggle they faced makes our routines look like a luxury retreat. Their survival wasn't just tough, it was non-stop. We've got instant everything. They had to grind, scrape, and sweat for every basic need. Gratitude doesn't seem like too much to ask. And yet, we're obsessed with them. Museums are packed with their relics. Documentaries rave about their ingenuity. Tourists flock to their ruins. Why? Because deep down, we admire their endurance. These weren't superheroes. They were ordinary people who did extraordinary things with limited tools and endless determination. They didn't build for convenience. They built for eternity. They didn't just survive the desert. They transformed it into a civilization. Their lives were hard, their tools simple, but their impact immense. That's what draws us in. That's what leaves us in awe. Even their spiritual outlook was ahead of its time. The Egyptians saw death not as an end, but as a transition. They planned for it meticulously, preparing tombs, writing guidebooks, and filling burial chambers with supplies for the next world. While we struggle with existential dread, they saw the afterlife as a perfected version of life, if you passed the tests. That belief didn't just comfort them, it shaped how they lived. Life wasn't just about the moment. It was a rehearsal for something greater. They weren't escaping death. They were training for immortality. We might not believe in weighing hearts or crocodile monsters like Amit, but we still measure our lives, just differently. Likes, views, salaries, grades. They're our modern scales. Ancient Egyptians would probably shake their heads at our obsessions. but they'd understand the pressure. They knew what it meant to try to pass the test, to seek approval from forces beyond their control. In that way, we're not so different. They offered prayers and spells. We craft resumes and online profiles. Different tools, same desire to be seen, remembered, and valued by something bigger. Even their art tells us this story. Look at their temple walls, tomb paintings, carved statues. They weren't just decoration. They were messages. Every image served a purpose: praise the gods, record achievements, protect the soul. The scale was epic because the message was eternal. And yet, they included humor too. Carvings of animals playing instruments, kids playing games, people drunk at festivals. They didn't just honor the grand, they captured the human. Their art proves they weren't robots in linen. They were complex, feeling, thinking people, just like us. And what about the women? We often picture ancient civilizations as male-dominated, but Egyptian women had more legal freedom than their Greek or Roman counterparts. They could sue, inherit, even initiate divorce. Queens like Hatshepsut ruled with full authority. Women weren't footnotes. They were pillars of the home and sometimes of the throne. That doesn't mean life was easy. Most women still faced constant labor and limited opportunities. But in their world, being a woman didn't mean being invisible. Their names are carved in stone too, proof of their presence, their influence, their strength. Egyptian parenting wasn't gentle or structured the way it is today. Children were expected to contribute early. Boys might follow their fathers into fields or workshops. Girls helped grind grain, fetch water, care for younger siblings. Toys existed, bowls, dolls, animal figures, but playtime was squeezed between chores. Education, if you were lucky and male, you might go to scribe school. Most kids learned survival skills from watching adults. Childhood was short, practical, and sometimes dangerous. But families cared deeply. Tomes often depict parents with children, arms linked, smiling, a legacy of love etched in stone. One thing Egyptians understood well was symbolism. Every color, every shape, every item in a tomb meant something. Blue represented fertility and rebirth. Green stood for new life. Scarabs symbolized transformation. Nothing was random. Their world was rich with meaning, from the amulets around their necks to the food on their offering tables. Even the act of painting a ceiling with stars wasn't just decorative. It was a map to the heavens. In a world filled with uncertainty, they created order through symbols. They made the invisible visible. They told the universe we're paying attention. Despite all the hardship, they kept dreaming. That's what the pyramids were, dreams in stone. Not just for pharaohs, but for an entire culture that believed in life after death, legacy after labor. They didn't hope to escape suffering. They hoped to outlast it. Their cities may have crumbled, their gods forgotten by many, but the echoes remain. You can walk through a ruin and still feel their ambition. It humbles you, inspires you, reminds you that greatness doesn't come from ease. It comes from commitment, from showing up every day with a chisel, a prayer, and a purpose. So if this journey through ancient Egypt taught you anything, let it be this: humans are incredibly resilient. We complain about traffic and bad coffee, but our ancestors braved wild rivers, scorching suns, and backbreaking work, all while building legacies that survived millennia. We're cushioned by comforts they couldn't dream of, but they had grit, they had vision, and above all, they had each other. Community was their safety net. Faith was their compass. They didn't just survive the desert, they built a civilization in it, and somehow they made it beautiful. The desert wasn't their enemy, it was their canvas. Where most saw endless sand and scorching heat, Egyptians carved cities, temples, and tombs. They used the land, the stone, the rhythm of the Nile to create something lasting. They understood their environment deeply. They didn't conquer nature, they cooperated with it. They built with mud brick and limestone, farmed with the seasons, lived by the river's pulse. Their genius wasn't just in architecture, it was in adaptability. In a world that constantly tested them, they didn't collapse. They built something that could outlive time. Even their calendar proves their brilliance. The ancient Egyptians tracked time by the stars, the sun, and the floods. They knew when the Nile would rise by watching Sirius appear in the sky. They divided the year into 3 seasons: inundation, planting, and harvest, each perfectly aligned with the river's moods. Their calendar had 12 months of 30 days, plus 5 bonus days tacked on for festivals. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. It let farmers plan, priests predict, and rulers organize. Time wasn't just passing, it was managed, measured, and woven into daily life. Education wasn't universal, but it was valued. The few who became scribes endured years of brutal schooling. They memorized texts, copied them again and again, and endured beatings for sloppy work. But literacy meant power. Scribes could read religious texts, write contracts, interpret omens. They were the middlemen between commoners and officials, mortals and gods. In a society where knowledge was rare, it made you vital. The pen wasn't just mightier than the sword. It was a ticket to comfort and respect. A trained scribe could rise higher than most laborers ever dreamed. And yet, for all this structure, there was still mystery. Much of ancient Egyptian belief and culture remains hard to decode. Some of their gods morphed over time, their myths shifted with dynasties. Even the famous Book of the Dead isn't one single book. It's a collection of spells that varied by region, status, and era. Their civilization wasn't static, it evolved. They absorbed influences, reinterpreted stories, adapted to new rulers. That's what makes them so fascinating. They were never just a relic of the past. They were dynamic, imaginative, and endlessly layered. Their burial practices alone could fill volumes. From simple pits to massive pyramids, burial reflected status and belief. The poor were wrapped in cloth and buried with a loaf of bread and a jug of beer. The wealthy, they were mummified, painted, sealed in decorated coffins, surrounded by treasures and texts. Death was a process. Organs were removed, dried, and stored in jars. The heart was left in, or sometimes removed, depending on era and priestly interpretation. The body was an anchor for the soul, and preserving it was key to rebirth. To die properly was almost as hard as living. Mummification wasn't just practical, it was sacred. Every step was ritualized. The embalmers were priests performing ceremonies, not just workers doing a job. They spoke prayers, wore special masks, and treated the body like a sacred vessel. Natron dried the flesh, resins preserved it, and charms protected it. Amulets were placed between the wrappings, scarabs, eyes of Horus, Ankhs. Layers of linen bound the body tightly, hundreds of yards in some cases, and once done, the mummy was placed in a painted coffin, ready for eternity. It wasn't preservation, it was transformation. For the Egyptians, death was a mirror of life. Just as you needed food, clothes, and tools in the mortal world, you'd need them in the next. That's why tombs were packed with furniture, weapons, cosmetics, and games. Models of servants were added to do chores in the afterlife. Paintings on the wall showed farms, feasts, and celebrations, not memories, but promises. Tombs weren't gloomy, they were hopeful. They said, "This person lived well and will live again." Their preparation wasn't about fear of death. It was about readiness for rebirth. To them, death was a doorway, not a wall. Even the smallest details mattered. The orientation of a tomb, the direction of a statue's gaze, the wording of a spell, all had meaning. They believed in magic, but not the chaotic kind. Their magic was ordered, intentional, structured. They called it Hika, the force that kept the world running. Priests, doctors, scribes, all tapped into it. A mispronounced word could ruin a ritual. A missing charm could doom a soul. Precision wasn't just valued, it was vital. Their world was full of invisible forces, and surviving them meant following rules. Ritual was how they navigated the divine. Even animals played spiritual roles. Cats were sacred to Bastet and protected homes. Crocodiles were feared and revered, linked to Sobek, the god of strength and protection. Ibises represented Thoth, the god of wisdom. Animals weren't pets, they were bridges to the divine. Some were even mummified and buried with honors. Temples had sacred animal cults with priests dedicated to feeding and caring for them. To harm one could bring curses. The Egyptians saw animals not as property, but as partners in maintaining harmony. Every creature had a place in their cosmic ecosystem. In the end, what made ancient Egypt so powerful wasn't just its monuments or mythology, it was its worldview. They believed in balance, life and death, man and God, order and chaos. They didn't try to escape nature, they lived within it. They accepted hardship and answered it with art, ritual and resilience. Their greatness wasn't a fluke, it was the result of enduring vision and communal effort. Thousands of years later, their voice still echoes in stone. Their symbols still speak. They didn't just exist. They made sure they'd never be forgotten, and they weren't. And while pharaohs built monuments, it was the common people, the workers, farmers, and craftspeople, who kept Egypt alive. They planted the fields, raised the walls, carved the statues. Most of them didn't leave behind names, but their fingerprints are everywhere. In pottery shards, tool marks on stone, faded graffiti hidden inside tombs. Their daily grind, though uncelebrated, formed the backbone of the empire. History often remembers kings, but without the anonymous hands shaping mud bricks and hauling stones under the sun, those kings would be nothing more than dreams in sand. Some of the most human voices we have from ancient Egypt come not from the elite, but from scribbles left behind by workers. In Deir el-Medina, the village of tomb builders, workers left messages on walls, notes about their lives, complaints about work, and jokes about co-workers. These weren't grand inscriptions. They were personal, relatable, sometimes funny. They show us people who got tired, who argued, who wanted better pay. For a moment, the past isn't distant, it's real, close, and strangely familiar. Proof that human nature hasn't changed all that much. Even religion, often seen as rigid and formal, had room for personal connection. Families had their household gods, their own small rituals, and their own interpretations. People carried amulets tailored to their worries: fertility, safety, love, protection in childbirth. They didn't just follow what priests told them. They built spiritual routines that matched their lives. Religion wasn't something you visited, it was something you lived with. The gods weren't distant beings. They were woven into daily chores, family meals, and bedtime prayers. It was personal, practical, and always present. And what's perhaps most remarkable is how long Egypt endured. From the unification around 3100 BCE to the arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE, Egypt lasted for nearly 3 millennia. That's longer than any modern nation-state. Dynasties rose and fell, Foreigners invaded, climates shifted, rulers changed gods and laws. But the Egyptian identity persisted. They adapted but didn't disappear. Their art style remained recognizable. Their writing systems stayed sacred. They held on to their core beliefs longer than most cultures even exist. Longevity wasn't luck, it was commitment. Why did it last so long? Partly geography. The desert on both sides of the Nile created natural borders. Enemies couldn't easily invade, and ideas didn't constantly flood in. The river itself gave predictable, life-giving floods, allowing for agricultural stability. But it was more than that. It was their worldview. Egyptians valued continuity, ritual, and balance. They didn't chase novelty. They cherished tradition. Their systems, once established, stayed in place for generations. While the world changed outside, Egypt moved to the steady beat of the Nile and the stars. Eventually, though, even Egypt couldn't resist change forever. Foreign rulers came, first the Persians, then the Greeks, and later the Romans. The language began to shift. The gods were slowly replaced. Temples fell out of use, but the influence never disappeared. Greek and Roman cultures borrowed heavily from Egypt, architecture, philosophy, religious ideas. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, ruled a nation that still clung to ancient roots, even as it danced with new powers. Egypt didn't vanish. It transformed. Its identity stretched, absorbed, and echoed across continents and centuries. Today, we walk through museums and gape at their wonders: golden masks, granite statues, painted coffins. We read about their rituals, their love poetry, their math and medicine, and it's easy to see them as otherworldly, so different, so distant. But the truth is, they weren't aliens. They were people, just like us, figuring out life, making mistakes, falling in love, raising kids, and trying to make something that lasts. They dealt with stress, loss, joy, and hope. The form has changed, but the feelings haven't. Their world was ancient. Their humanity was not. The more we study ancient Egypt, the more we realize how interconnected we are with the past. We still use words from their language, like paper, from papyrus. Our calendars, medical practices, and even spiritual concepts carry traces of their legacy. Their ideas shaped later cultures that shaped ours. Egypt may feel far away, but it's in your textbooks, your architecture, even in how we bury the dead or honor names. Time has passed, yes, but threads remain. Egypt isn't just behind us. It's beneath us in the roots of our civilization. So would you survive a day in ancient Egypt? Probably not. The heat would floor you. The food would upset your stomach. The physical labor would break your will. You'd struggle to sleep, to clean, to eat, and to move. But if you could survive, even for one day, you'd see a world full of rhythm, purpose, and resilience. A society that wasn't rich in luxury, but rich in meaning. Every task had weight. Every prayer had intention. Life wasn't easy, but it wasn't empty. For all its hardship, Egypt offered something modern life often lacks: clarity of purpose. And so, when you finally return to your bed in the modern world, soft pillow, electric fan, clean water, you might feel different. Grateful. Grounded. A little in awe of the people who came before us. They didn't have our tools, but they had drive. They didn't have Google, but they had stars and scribes. They didn't have air conditioning, but they had vision. And they used it to build a legacy that's still standing thousands of years later. That's more than survival. That's brilliance, and it's worth remembering, especially on the days we think we've got it rough. As you close your eyes tonight, maybe the image of ancient Egypt lingers in your mind, not the polished Hollywood version, but the raw, dusty reality. a farmer hauling jars beneath a burning sky, a mother grinding grain with a baby on her back, a scribe hunched over papyrus in dim light. These weren't just background characters in some grand epic. They were the heartbeat of a civilization. And they did it all without electricity, machines, or shortcuts. Their strength wasn't in their muscles alone, but in their ability to endure. Night after night, century after century, they built lives with calloused hands and hopeful hearts. Their world was filled with superstition and sand, hardship and hymns, but it was also full of laughter, community and love. We often forget that history isn't just war and rulers, it's people. Everyday people, the ones who held the line when times were tough and kept traditions alive. The ones who died young but dreamed big. When we say ancient Egyptians, we're not just talking about tombs or gods. We're honoring millions of souls who lived fully in a world that asked for everything and gave little back. And for all its differences, ancient Egypt offers something universal, a reminder that life is about connection between humans and nature, between people and gods, between the past and the future. The Egyptians didn't try to dominate the world, they tried to harmonize with it. That's why their civilization thrived. That's why it still resonates. They didn't rush. They didn't waste. They built slowly, carefully, with intention. And when they left this world, they left behind not just structures, but a philosophy, a way of being, a belief that life matters, even when it's hard. There's beauty in that kind of endurance, in the quiet dignity of working with what you have, trusting the river to rise, trusting the gods to watch, trusting that your name carved in stone will outlive your bones. That's what they held on to. And maybe we need some of that now. A little more patience, a little more perspective, a little more respect for things that take time. The pyramids weren't built in a week. The afterlife wasn't earned in a day, and a legacy isn't created by accident. It's shaped slowly, grain by grain, brick by brick, word by word. We live in an age of speed. We want everything now, faster, cheaper, easier. But Egypt reminds us that the best things take time. That meaning comes from effort. That beauty emerges from struggle. Their civilization didn't rise with a click. It rose through labor, belief, and sacrifice. They weren't perfect. They had flaws, fears, failures. But they tried. And they built. And they believed in something bigger than themselves. That's the lesson they leave behind. Not just how to survive, but how to create something that endures long after we're gone. So maybe the question isn't, would you survive a day in ancient Egypt? Maybe it's, what can you learn from those who did? Can you face discomfort without crumbling? Can you honor tradition without becoming stuck? Can you build something meaningful, even when no one's watching? These aren't just historical questions, they're personal ones. Egypt doesn't ask us to copy their world. It invites us to reflect on our own, how we live, what we value, what we'll leave behind. Their past holds up a mirror to our present and asks us if we're really paying attention. In the end, ancient Egypt is more than ruins and relics. It's a story of human potential. It's a reminder that greatness comes not from what you have, but from what you do with it. They had stone, they made monuments. They had sand, they built cities. They had dreams, and they carved them into the earth. If they could do that, without electricity, engines, or machines, what excuse do we have? Their legacy isn't just awe-inspiring. It's a challenge, a call to build something worthy, to live like what we do matters, to make the future remember us too. So tomorrow, when you sip your clean water, or take a hot shower. Maybe whisper a quiet thanks to the past. To the people who carried heavy loads so we wouldn't have to. To the civilizations that mapped the stars so we could fly to them. To the farmers, builders, priests, artists, and parents whose lives were short but deeply lived. We're not better than them. We're standing on their shoulders. And that's the true foundation of history, not just knowledge, but gratitude. Not just learning, but honoring. They walked so we could run. The least we can do is remember. And maybe, just maybe, after this journey through dust, heat, and history, you'll look at the ancient world differently. Not as something to study, but something to feel. Not as old stone, but living memory. Because Egypt isn't just a place, it's a pulse. Still beating in the sands, still echoing in temples, still alive in the stories we tell. When you see a pyramid, you're not looking at the past. You're looking at proof that humans can do incredible things when they believe in something deeply enough. And that, above all, is the real miracle of ancient Egypt. So sleep well, fellow traveler. Let the hum of the Nile, the flicker of torchlight, and the quiet prayers of the ancients drift through your dreams. You've walked a mile in sandals you never knew you could wear. You felt the weight of water jars and the warmth of ancient sun. And now, with a little more perspective, and maybe a little more awe, you return to your world. Egypt stays with you. Not just in memory, but in meaning. A place long gone, yet never truly lost. Good night, and may your heart be light as a feather.